and welcome to the Second Nature webinar on The Collaborative, a one-stop shop to electrifying your fleet. My name is Alex Maxwell, and I am the manager of cross-sector climate programs at Second Nature. And during today's webinar, our panelists will discuss how colleges and universities can become involved in the Climate Mayor's EV Purchasing Collaborative, which is an unprecedented collaborative and partnership between climate mayors, the Electrification Coalition, and Sourcewell, aimed at accelerating the transition to electric vehicle fleets by removing barriers to purchase. Before I start by introducing our speakers, I would like to take care of a few housekeeping items. First, just so that you're aware, this webinar is being recorded. After the webinar, you will receive a link to the recording by email tomorrow, which you can use to watch the webinar again and of course share with your colleagues. During the webinar itself, all attendees will be muted. However, you will have the opportunity to ask questions, and we strongly encourage you to do so using the questions window on the GoToWebinar control panel. Questions will be collected and curated throughout the webinar and then asked of our panelists during the question and answer session at the very end of the webinar. Please note, you may also use the chat window, which is also located in the control panel, if you're experiencing any technical difficulties during the webinar. And my colleague Devin will message you directly to troubleshoot any issues. Now, to introduce our panelists. So today, I'm excited to be joined by James Ritchotte, Director of Climate Mayors, Sarah Reed, Program Manager at the Electrification Coalition, and Tom Poveromo, who works in fleet procurement at the University of California, Los Angeles. Now, for our first speaker, James Ritchotte.
Great, thanks very much, Alex. Really appreciate it, and thanks very much for organizing today's conversation. And I just want to talk briefly about climate mayors, and a little bit about our history and how the Climate Mayors EV Purchasing Collaborative came about before turning it over to Sarah. So Climate Mayors was founded in 2014 by Mayor Eric Garcetti of Los Angeles, alongside then mayors Michael Nutter and Anise Parker of Philadelphia and Houston, respectively. And essentially, at the time of its founding, mayors really wanted to make sure that there was a strong voice for cities as the conversations around climate and clean energy policy were gaining traction at the national level as well as at the state level. And so the mayors felt like there needed to be this strong voice for cities representing their priorities, their interests. So that's where we kind of originally started. And at the time of our founding, there were about 40 member cities, grew somewhat organically through to the summer of 2017. And then President Trump announced that the United States was going to withdraw from the Paris Agreement, and over 300 new members joined in the span of 2 months. And so I think there were just a lot of cities who were waiting for the administration to make a decision one way or another, and they really kind of came forward to showcase their leadership. So we now have over 460 member mayors from across the country, representing about 74 million Americans in 48 states. Our current co-chair, so Mayor Garcetti remains our chair, and our current co-chairs are Mayor Walsh of Boston and the current mayor of Houston, Mayor Sylvester Turner. We are an incredibly diverse organization. So we have some of the largest cities in the country, as well as some of the smallest towns. Some of our members are 400 plus residents, so all the way through to cities like Los Angeles, Chicago, and New York. And I think that diversity is one of our strengths, because to a T, every one of our mayors shares a commitment to addressing climate change by taking meaningful action in their communities and maintaining this commitment to upholding the goals of the Paris Agreement. And so as a part of this effort, mayors across the country are prioritizing building efficiency, renewable energy deployment, and increased electrification of their municipal fleets. And so In the fall of 2018, we launched the Climate Mayors EV Purchasing Collaborative in partnership with the Electrification Coalition and with Sourcewell, and really the program was meant to leverage the collective buying power of cities to help transition their fleets to electric and showcase the kind of leadership at the local level that's missing at the federal level right now. And so one point that I want to stress before turning over to Sarah is that while the title has Climate Mayors in it, the program is open to all public entities and nonprofit organizations. And Sarah will talk a little bit more about some of the organizations who are currently participating in the collaborative. But while we want to encourage all 460 of our member cities to be involved and engaged in this program, we're also working with several other public entities and nonprofit organizations to help them think through their next steps around this transition to electric vehicles. And one of the primary reasons we're speaking with you all today is to just talk more about that, more about the program and how it might help you think through your next steps. So with that, I'll just touch really quickly on some of our priorities going forward before I hand over to Sarah. We have just launched a leadership series ourselves. I mean, I think in the absence of being able to get together in person, we want to look for opportunities to showcase the leadership mayors are taking across the country on climate action. And so there are a series of panel discussions that will be taking place over the next few months focused on that. We want to continue to push both at the local level as well as at the national level for more comprehensive action on climate change. And I think in the current environment, both politically as well as other challenges related to the COVID crisis and the economic crisis, that is challenging. But there is this recognition that we can drive economic recovery through action on climate. We can drive action on climate through economic recovery. And so there is this real hyper focus on the need to identify solutions that address the health concerns and crises that cities are dealing with right now, address the economic challenges right now, address the racial and environmental injustice that we are seeing at the forefront of our country right now, as well as tackling climate change. And so those are obviously a lot of very, very challenging issues, but I think mayors across the country see solutions out there that can meet those challenges. And so looking to 2020 and beyond, really want to continue to focus on the need to address climate change through programs like the collaborative, as well as other key sectors around renewable energy, building efficiency, and working with partners like yourselves to advance those efforts. Because I think there are organizations across the country, cities, states, private sector, academia, nonprofit sector, cultural institutions, et cetera, who are all committed to taking action on climate change. And I think there's real opportunity to partner on these efforts and really amplify the work that we're doing and share best practices in support of each other's objectives. So with that, I'll stop and turn over to Sarah Reed at the Electrification Coalition.
Thanks so much, James. And thank you again to Second Nature and to Alex for inviting me and the collaborative and James to participate on this webinar. So I'm a program manager at the Electrification Coalition, and I manage the Climate Mayors EV Purchasing Collaborative. Next slide. So the EC is a nonprofit, nonpartisan advocacy organization. We are committed to deploying electric vehicles and overall reducing our dependence on oil. We have a really national and economic security focus, which allows us as a nonprofit to utilize a variety of voices in order to further our mission. And we are actually based in DC, but had a largely remote team even before March. And I am based in Northern California near Sacramento. We have folks spread out all across the country in Atlanta, in Cincinnati, in San Diego, in Washington, DC, in North Carolina. So we have a very wide range of projects and programs that we work on. We worked on kind of this list here that you can see on the slides, and have served as an implementation partner for the Smart Columbus project through the USDOT Smart Cities Challenge, as a technical advisor for the Bloomberg American Cities Climate Challenge. And just this year, we also launched a new effort with 5 new staff on advancing policy towards EVs in 5 different states that you can see on this slide as well. Next slide. So the project that I'd like to highlight today, as James was discussing, is the Climate Mayors EV Purchasing Collaborative. And it is a partnership between Climate Mayors and the EC. We are the technical advisor, in addition to Sourcewell, which is a cooperative procurement organization. And together, the 3 of us have put a one-stop shop for fleets all across the country, in all sectors, cities and counties and ports and universities, to help advance fleet transition across the country, including universities. Next slide. So what does the collaborative do? So as James mentioned, it was launched in September 2018 and has already reduced a lot of barriers for EV transition for public fleets. Using cooperative procurement, if you don't already do this, allows for a reduction in administrative time and also lowers the cost of vehicles by aggregating demand from fleets all across the country. And something unique to this collaborative as well is that you are able to lease vehicles, and that helps public fleets take advantage of some of the federal tax credit that you're not able to access just by purchasing. And public fleets can then also have access to the assistance from the EC for planning, purchasing, and implementation, all the stages of putting EVs actually into your fleet. Next slide. So some of the resources that are available, it is all free. It's all customized staff support from our staff of about 4 folks at the EC that work on this project. And we're here to support universities by providing resources, peer-to-peer connections with other universities that might be working on similar challenges, and just general technical assistance and advice. And so our website includes many best practices, other resources that are available, and the platform is also always expanding to include additional vehicle types to expand beyond just some of the light duty options that might be out there. I'll touch on this a little bit later, but also moving into medium and heavy duty vehicles, transit buses, school buses, and I know Tom from UCLA will talk about the wide range of other vehicles that they have electrified on their campus as well. And so some specific examples of support that we can provide includes guidance on vehicle options, guidance on implementing different policies to either have EVs be the first option that procurement has to look at when they're replacing a vehicle, infrastructure planning, and then just sort of that light touch fleet analysis, helping you as a fleet manager, sustainability staff, procurement staff understand what vehicles in your fleet would be a good fit for EVs, how that pencils out. The EC, as a nonprofit and partner on this project, is a really trusted source for this kind of information as well, which is something I think our staff takes pride in. And then finally, by participating in the collaborative, it allows your fleet and university to be highlighted as a leader in the EV space. So, you know, you're included in our list of committed fleets that we have on the website. We do webinars like this where we highlight what different fleets are doing, case studies, webinars, social media, all of that. And then we also used to do some in-person conferences and all of that kind of stuff too, to just continue to showcase what public fleets across the country are doing in this space. Next slide. So these are just some screenshots of our website. It's driveevfleets.org. You can see it down there on the bottom. All the vehicle options that are available on the website are through Sourcewell. As I mentioned, they are a governmental organization, not-for-profit in Minnesota, and they provide pricing for all of the vehicles that are available. The pricing is available across the country. It's incredibly transparent. It's all right there on the website. And you can see the slide here like compares two vehicles and shows their mileage and their cost and all of that, and all of the contract information, because all of their contracts are competitively bid, can also be found on the website. And the website also has a list of committed fleets, as I mentioned, and resources to to participate in the collaborative, just want to highlight you don't have to use Sourcewell. We've partnered with Sourcewell because they offer a wide range of light duty vehicle offerings. And as we said, that they are available across the country. So they're a really good solution for a lot of different fleets, but you don't have to use them to have access to the EC expertise and to be a part of this collaborative and showcase as a leader. So to kind of cover those points that James and I really want to make sure to hammer home is you don't have to be a city. You don't have to purchase from Sourcewell. Any public fleet, and you can do your own bid. You can use your state bid, however you normally procure vehicles. We're happy to help work with you and see you transition your fleet to electric. Next slide. So what is sort of the scale of our project? So we work with over 200 cities, counties, universities, ports, transit agencies, school districts to transition portions of their fleet to electric. Right now, as we're kind of growing in the university space, UCLA is a committed fleet, as well as University of Texas, San Antonio. All of these fleets are committed to over 3,600 light duty vehicles before the end of next year. So this project's really focused on what you can do this year and next year to transition vehicles that are being replaced right now. And so far, we've had about 1,600 EVs procured that we have helped fleets put into their vehicle pools and other locations in their fleet. And so we'd love to help add your fleet to this list and to continue to show demand and innovation from universities and from other public fleets because of our reach across the country. And with these 200 plus fleets, we have a really good idea of what other folks are working on. That's where we can kind of make those peer-to-peer connections. We can say to automakers, you know, every single fleet we work with really wants an electric truck, those sorts of things. So kind of also becoming a part of the collaborative and also being a part of the Client Mayors Network helps amplify your voice and what your fleet needs as well in the alternative fuel space. Next slide. So this slide shows some of what's on the website right now. You can see the Chevy Bolt. We're really excited. We've added 2 electric SUV options that are new. The Ford Escape plug-in. I know lots of people have Ford fleets, so that one's been really popular. And then the Kia Niro comes in an all-electric and a plug-in hybrid version. So those are some new exciting types of vehicles that are out there in this space. In general, we can find other vehicles that you're interested in, and these 6 were just what I kind of pulled from the website, but you can take a look there and see what's available. And then also there's these 5 charging infrastructure vendors that are also available through Sourcewell. So any 5 of those, they've been competitively bid. You can talk to them and purchase from them as well as part of the collaborative. Next slide. So as I mentioned, just want to highlight how we are expanding into other vehicle types. So school buses, Bluebird is on contract with Sourcewell. We're hoping to add others this year. There's 2 electric street sweeper, always a tongue twister, options that are available through the collaborative. Hoping to add transit, hoping to add medium and heavy duty this year. Always trying to expand to what is available in the EV market. So right now, pretty heavy focus on light duty because that is some of the lowest hanging fruit in your fleet. But there are also some additional options that are available as well. Next slide. So one of the things that this project does as well is we put together these case studies that highlight what we have done to help fleets across the country and how they've integrated EVs into their fleet, how much money they've saved on fuel and on maintenance, any challenges that they had. So these are all available on our website as well. Chula Vista, Binghamton, New York, Cincinnati, Ohio, Winter Park, Florida, and we have one coming out soon with Ann Arbor, Michigan. We hope to do a case study with a university this year as well. So if you're interested in that, definitely reach out to me. These are just a couple page documents that have some really good information and just tell a little story about a fleet. And some of these, they purchased their first EVs. So they bought 2 and it was, you know, a really big step for them to break into this market. And then others bought 30 and they're just continuing to fully electrify their fleet. So they kind of cover a range. And if you're interested in leasing, the Winter Park case study does highlight leasing because they went down that path. Next slide. So what can you do next with all of this information? So please reach out to me to get started on becoming a part of this first wave of universities who are committed to the collaborative. Committing is just a simple statement saying that you plan to buy X number of EVs. There's no obligation to buy. There's no, as I said, requirement to use Sourcewell. We don't even post individual commitments anywhere publicly. We use all aggregated data across the fleets. So it's a very simple process. It doesn't need to be, you know, a super high level chancellor or president commitment or anything like that. So we want to make it very accessible. This can also help you reach your climate commitment that you've made through Second Nature. As part of your strategy to reduce emissions and carbon, we can really help provide resources to expand your efforts in your fleet to do some of the things that you're already working on with Second Nature. And then also we plan to do a press release and just general media push of all the universities that have committed between now and the end of September. So I really encourage you to reach out and commit before then to be a part of this first kind of like marketing media wave of universities that are electrifying their fleets. And then lastly, James and I are just also really interested in further exploring the opportunities between cities and universities. So just want to put a plug in there that if you're interested or if you have a really cool project with your city or have something in that sphere that you want to share, definitely also reach out to us on that and we can figure out something kind of cool to amplify what you are doing there. So I think just go to my next slide and just thanks again. And I look forward to hearing from you and hearing from your fleets and helping transition universities to electric and building all the great work that you're already doing. So my contact information is there and I know we'll have time for questions. So now I'll turn it over to Tom from UCLA to talk about all of the great work that they are doing on their campus.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Tom Poveromo. I am a fleet procurement specialist at UCLA. I've been privileged to work at UCLA for 22 years. Most of my career was down in the maintenance shop. I've been on the procurement team for the last 2 to 3 years. So I've seen a little bit of everything during my time at UCLA. We have a fleet of a little over 1,000 vehicles. That's heavy duty and light duty. We are really into the electric vehicle solutions for campus. The past 2 years, we've probably purchased close to 150 vehicles, and I'm proud to say over 50% of those vehicles were all electric. Some of the pictures shown on the screen, last year we purchased an all-electric Winnebago. We just recently purchased 2 green power shuttle buses. We have a BYD shuttle bus as well. And we just recently received our first Ford Interceptor hybrid vehicle. And we currently have 4 or 5 additional hybrid Interceptors also on order. At UCLA and with all the other UCs, we have a goal by 2025 to be 100% carbon neutral. In layman terms, the bottom line is if there's an electric platform out there, UCLA will explore it. There are a lot of different options, especially aftermarket. There's BYD, there's Motive, there's Lightning Systems. We have worked with the majority of those. Most of those vehicles, as most people can understand, are a little more expensive than a traditional ICE vehicle. But a good thing about working in California is there's a lot of grant opportunities for us. We get rebates from the California Clean Vehicle Rebate Project, primarily for light duty vehicles like Bolts and Pacificas and Leafs. We have submitted applications for the VW Trust to replace some existing transit buses that we have. And there's always HFIB as well that we've had a lot of success, including our Winnebago, all electric Winnebago. And also in addition to that, we have plenty of low speed vehicles as well throughout our fleet. We primarily use Polaris Gem, and Columbia, we've had the most success, and we get the best support from those two. But as I mentioned earlier, the bottom line is if there is an electric platform out there, we pursue it. We just jump in the pool head first and give it a shot. We have had some challenges and experienced some, obstacles in regards to infrastructure and charging, especially on the heavy duty side. But we always seem to find solutions in order to get these vehicles. We have electric BYD electric buses in our transit fleet. So again, sorry to repeat myself, but if there's an electric platform out there, that's the first thing we look at. We use Sourcewell. Sourcewell has been very good to us. We get great contract pricing with it. And also UCLA loves to be a collaborative partner with anybody. I go to a lot of webinars like most of us do now, and I attend when we get back to normal, a lot of local meetings. And I'm always excited when I see another university or just another fleet organization that has an electric vehicle that we don't have, because then I know there's another option out there for us. So we are always available to collaborate and answer any questions and kind of share our experiences. But we are proud of the vehicles I have listed there, and we will continue to only purchase all electric vehicles or hybrid for the foreseeable future. Thank you.
Great, and thank you to all of our panelists for their talks. I would just like to welcome the fellow panelists here. If you'd like to turn on your webcams for the question and answer portion here, we can share our view with everyone, so people can put a face to a name here. But did have a couple questions come in, and certainly would encourage folks to keep asking questions. We're monitoring this in the questions window here. But one of the first questions that I had actually for you, Tom, is about the infrastructure and charging challenges that you ran into at UCLA. I was wondering if you could perhaps expand upon what those were, and more importantly, the solutions that you found yourself developing to kind of carry forward with your mission to explore all the electric vehicle options there.
So some of the struggles, and the Winnebago is a great example. Our Winnebago that we purchased, we have a campus hospital, Ronald Reagan Hospital, and then we have a Santa Monica hospital as well. This particular vehicle is for our surgical instrument engineer team. The vehicle only goes back and forth from hospital to hospital. They have to charge it in Santa Monica because we don't have an on-campus available space infrastructure to charge that vehicle. So the space that we had to create for them in Santa Monica, it was an extremely tight space. So where we run into our struggles is infrastructure, primarily for the heavy duty vehicles. UCLA we don't have a lot of space. We're always building. If you ever visit UCLA, there's constant construction going on. We are just expanding. Since I've been there in my tenure at UCLA, we've had 2 parking structures. One is now the Ronald Reagan Hospital, and one is our on-campus conference center. So, and I imagine in the future, most of our parking structures will be eliminated, and there'll be different buildings there. So when I say challenges and struggles, it's we have our own power plant on campus. So we're limited on grid a little bit on campus. Santa Monica Hospital is through Southern California Edison, so they have great programs that they've assisted with us to provide grid and also charging for some of our heavy duty vehicles. Space is the best way I can answer that question. It's just we just have very limited space. Besides charging the vehicles, it's finding places to park these vehicles. And then some of the structures on our campus are so old, we have height restrictions. So that's part of the infrastructures that I'm trying to reference that in which we have challenges. Right now, I'm actually working on another Winnebago for our blood and platelet donor center. But the first questions I'm asking my customer is, where are you going to park this vehicle and where are you going to charge this vehicle? So they're on board to go all electric, which most of our customers are, but at the same time, especially the heavy duty, it's finding space to park them, and with that space has to come with charging facilities.
Great, thanks, Tom. Appreciate you taking that first question. Sarah, we had a question I think you'll be best positioned to answer here, but others, please feel free to chime in as well. It was just a clarification question. Please clarify what Sourcewell is. Is it a wholesale seller of vehicles? Does it offer EV school buses at better prices than buying from retail? Anything you can speak to there, I think you'll be able to handle that one.
Yeah, of course, good point. And then I can have Tom add anything too as an actual user. So they are a cooperative purchasing agency. So they do competitively bid solicitations, hold contracts with different vendors that are available across the country. So they sell everything from like pens and playground equipment to EVs, office supplies like chairs, like all different kinds of things. And they are open to all public agencies, so cities and counties and public universities, and then actually private universities as well as nonprofits can also purchase from Sourcewell. But sometimes the pricing is a little bit different for those because of some of the restrictions that maybe private universities don't have on procurement that other public universities or public agencies may have. But that is something that like talking to Sourcewell can help figure out. And so because these contracts are competitively bid, you don't have to go out to RFP, do all of the administrative process within your own agency. So you're saving all the time and money of going through that process, doing your own bid process, picking your own options. And on the vehicle side, National Auto Fleet Group is the vendor for vehicles. And so they have connections with lots of different OEMs, manufacturers of vehicles, so like Honda, you know, Chevrolet, GM, Ford, all of that. And so they pretty much can access any vehicle that you're interested for the most part in. And then they have a very specific pricing and can do additional add-ons that you might need for your fleet. And you have to be a member of Sourcewell, but to be a member, that's free. You don't have to do anything extra. It just gets you a number that you have to use, I think, to purchase. And if you join Sourcewell, you also don't have to purchase anything. So it's the same sort of like non-obligatory membership process. But Tom, is there anything that you want to add to that as somebody who's actually used Sourcewell?
Yeah, we use it on a National Automobile Fleet Group is who we have utilized. We've had great success. We have purchased Chevy Bolts. We currently have 11 Chrysler Pacificas on order. There's been a little hiccups with that, but that's on the Chrysler side, not on the Sourcewell National Automobile Fleet Group side. We have purchased Nissan Leafs, so they have been great. It's a very extremely easy process. You could do it online if you want, or I have some contacts I could share. But you ask questions, you get immediate answers. They accept purchase orders, which is nice because not everyone will accept a purchase order. They communicate when a vehicle is going to be delayed. We have had nothing but positive things to say about our experience with Sourcewell / National Automobile Fleet Group.
Thanks, Tom. That's good to hear. And also they factory order the vehicles, so any like specific changes that you want to how it comes to you. So I know some fleets that do like a cargo bolt, so the back seats will not be included, and so it kind of gives you this big cargo area in the back that you can use for like, you know, utility people, or I know like wastewater at cities, people sometimes get those. So you can also do kind of interesting things like that through Sourcewell and order specifically what you want. So it's kind of interesting.
Can I just add something really quickly?
I'm sorry. You can
also go ahead.
They will do aftermarket things for you as well. You know, we ordered a couple of cargo bolts and we needed some equipment inside. So National Automobile Fleet Group will also do that for you. So that's a nice resource to have.
And I was just going to quickly add that, a lot of our cities have different capacity to take advantage of the platform, right? So there are certain rules that they have to follow. So I mean, it's not necessarily going to work for everyone. I don't know. I'm not as familiar with the university side of things, but certain cities will prioritize local dealerships and so forth. But I mean, Sourcewell and the EC are happy to work with you regardless, to try and help you think through next steps. And then if the Sourcewell platform works, great. If not, then you can take advantage of other options. But I would say at least on the EV side, for cities, I mean, that the pricing is really competitive, and the cities have been really pleased, as Tom was saying, have been very pleased with the service that Sourcewell and other partners have been providing.
Great, thanks for adding that, James. And I might just ask kind of a piggyback question here. We had a question come in about specific stipulations around the purchasing of EVs here. And I know, I believe it was you, Sarah, that mentioned, some folks, maybe it's popular to go with Ford or a US producer, but the question that came in was, our transportation folks say they are limited in purchasing by having to purchase US made. How has this been handled by other folks, maybe even places like UCLA or elsewhere? I'll leave that open to anyone to really answer there.
Well, at UCLA, we used to be a General Motors school. When I said that, we used to purchase everything General Motors, all of our vehicles. That's kind of changed over the last couple of years. Since some of the auto manufacturers, General Motors being one, Toyota another, are not supporting the California tailpipe policies and procedures, we no longer purchase General Motors unless it's going to be an all-electric vehicle like a Bolt or something like that. So primarily, we support the clean policies that the governor has set, and so we now will only focus on Ford vehicles only, unless as I mentioned, it's an electric vehicle. Then we could go towards Bolt or a Prius on the Toyota side or something like that.
Great, thanks, Tom. Anything else to add? Anyone else? I think that covers it well. We did have another follow-up question related to school buses. So it appears that Bluebird, at least in Philadelphia, doesn't actually have any school buses. And it's noted here by the questioner, they're twice as much as comparable ICE buses, and the sales rep has guessed there's an 18-month delivery. There's also limited opportunity to lease to buy. What has your experience been with availability of school buses?
Yeah, school buses are really tricky because, as you said, the cost is just a huge barrier. And so in our experience, for the most part, on vehicles like that, you're getting grant funding, or a lot of the VW settlement funding in different states is paying for school buses, like in New York. And so that's generally what encourages a school district to purchase. In California, the Energy Commission gives out lots of money for school buses, so that's who I've worked with here. So to be on Sourcewell, you do have to have product and be nationally available. And so theoretically, the electric school buses are available. In terms of like delay for builds and all of that, I don't really know. I could believe the 18-month issue. Hopefully that's not the case across the country, and maybe through Sourcewell you can get something better than your rep in your regional area. But it should make it available. And then also for leasing, so there are actually 3 different leasing vendors that are available through Sourcewell. So National Cooperative Leasing, Enterprise, like the rental car, they do fleet services, and then D&M Leasing. And all of them can do a lease to buy situation for a school bus. So where you could make lease payments for 3 years, or they do all different kinds of terms, and then you can own it at the end or do a buyout at the end. So that's definitely something, if you're interested in that, whoever is out there, definitely reach out to me. Can provide more information on specifics. But yeah, I can't speak too much to the actual delivery and availability on the school bus side. Sourcewell just did another school bus solicitation process, so we're hoping in a couple months, once the new vendors are awarded, there will be additional options as well, which will hopefully help.
Thanks, Sarah. Appreciate you fielding that one. Another question here, and it kind of actually got brought up in responding to the previous question here. The question is around grant funding opportunities. So the question is, what is a good resource to find funding or grant opportunities for electrification for higher ed?
Good question.
And the questioner, just to add, the questioner is based in Illinois.
In Illinois, okay. So because the EC, we have people all over, so we kind of work in different regions. Since I'm in California, I mostly work on the West. So I have a pretty great idea of what's available in my area. So talking to somebody at the EC that works in Illinois would have a pretty good idea of like what other people are using, what's out there, can also help you look. I don't know if there is like a national listing of like what's available for universities. I'm hoping Tom can add to that if there's any tips and tricks for how he finds stuff, but a lot of it is searching, and so that's something that we can help with, is to try to help you find funding for different kinds of vehicles, or through VW settlement funding or other state funding.
Yes, Sarah's correct. So a lot of research and a lot of networking. I think, networking kind of goes with being in a collaborative team. Like we've had a lot of success with HFIB. Unfortunately, HFIB, ran out of money. We have 4 current applications with the VW Trust, but obviously with the pandemic and everything, that's kind of been put on the back burner. Besides that, what I have learned is I request companies like Green Power and Lightning Systems and others out there, Change. I have them do the work for me. I go, if they want me to purchase your $150,000 all electric 26-foot box truck or whatever it is, and I know I have no HFIB opportunities, or I can't submit any more applications for VW Trust, there's other things out there, and I request that they do the legwork for us. You want us to purchase your vehicle, we're interested, but you got to help us get funding, because everything's probably over $100,000 on the heavy duty side. We just, light duty is a little bit easier, obviously, but as I said, I request them to help me through the process.
Yep, definitely a good point. They can definitely help with that, because like Tom said, they really want you to buy their vehicle. So
Absolutely.
So I think some people will help write grants, probably.
Yes.
Depending on the company.
Great. Well, thank you for those responses. There is a more specific question. I know VW was brought up in your response there, Tom, but questioner asked, can you help us with VW funding? Maybe even address this question around when the next round of funding will be available for school buses. Can anybody speak to that? That's, I know, a quite specific question, and maybe to just broaden it out a bit. To please just expand on the VW Trust grants. Another questioner came in, said in New York, that funding appears to be funneled through the state DOT. Is there a way to do things differently to access the VW's money?
It's very dependent on the state. So, every state, the beneficiary that manages the money should have their own website and all of that, and how they're dividing out the money is very specific. I think I just saw something in the news about how they have this huge pot of money from this VW settlement, and they've only given out a really small amount of it. So it also seems to always be changing. So we can definitely help point you in the right direction on that. And then we're always available too to review applications for things like that. So we don't write anything through the collaboratives, we couldn't do that for everybody, but we're happy to review what you've put together, help you strengthen applications or things like that for different pots of money. But yeah, happy to share specific information to each state.
Great, thanks, Sarah. James, just to pull you in again a little bit here, and maybe Tom, you can speak to this too, but I know you mentioned you're kind of interested in these opportunities where there's maybe alignment between, a city's carbon emissions goals and maybe universities. Tom, I guess specifically for you, has there been any coordination, with the mayor's office in LA or just the city of LA? And James, maybe you can chime in as well to speak to what the benefits to sort of aligning efforts between the cities and individual colleges and universities in those cities might be. That would be helpful for folks, I think, to hear about.
Well, as far as us, we haven't had any really direct relationship with the city of Los Angeles and the mayor's office yet. Most of our collaborative efforts are either through some of the organizations that we are involved in, like MEMA and NAFA and things like that. But amongst the UCs, we have 10 campuses. We do a very good job of collaborating. We have a manager's email chain that we work together in order to accomplish or get close to our 2025 goal of being 100% neutral. But as far as working directly with the mayor's office, there was a little progress we had with that towards the end of last year, but like everything else right now, I'm sure the pandemic has kind of put a lot of movement on the back burner, if you know what I mean. But no, we have not had any specific relationship with the city of Los Angeles mayor's office yet.
I think, Alex, part of these conversations is, I think, looking for those types of opportunities going forward. I think there is a lot happening right now in cities and universities, hospitals. Second Nature is a member of We Are Still In, of which Climate Mayors is also a member. And so, a lot of different groups with shared interests, shared priorities, and working, on EVs, working on distributed generation, working on energy storage, renewable energy, et cetera, et cetera. And I think looking for those opportunities where we can work together and collaborate on these efforts, I think can be really beneficial. I think it kind of maximizes resources in an increasingly resource-constrained world. But I think too, one of the things that climate mayors have been talking a lot about over the last, I've been with climate mayors for 2 years now, and this has been quite a focus for them, but I think increasingly so over the last 6 months is around resilience. And how do you ensure that you are building more resilient infrastructure and making sure you have the capacity to deal with changes in your environment and just various shocks to your system. And I think the greater coordination among the different partners who are involved in academia, at the city level, I think contributes a lot to that as well. And so I think there's definitely a lot of opportunity for greater collaboration and coordination on these efforts.
Great, thanks for that response there. Another quick question, and Tom, I'll direct this to you. I know you've mentioned your 2025 goal there, which is great, and it sounds like you're charging ahead full steam. I was wondering if you could perhaps highlight or just expand upon how you're actually tracking your emissions reduction, and how that kind of plays into your overall reporting of GHG emissions, and if you even have any stats to share on just what you've been able to do to reduce emissions from your baseline case just within your fleet. I'd be curious to hear anything you could share in that realm.
Recently, again, having been working at UCLA for such a long time, we just over the past 2 years, we have really moved in a direction, besides being all electric, but installing GPS devices on our vehicles, if the vehicle doesn't already come with it. So we can track things, high idling and emission numbers a little bit through that way. We have a strategy business analysis team that I am part of. That's only been functioning probably over the last 2 years. I can get data from them. We have specific people that will pull that data for us. But it's primarily through tracking devices and GPS and other sources like that. For instance, on our buses, BYD had a pretty sophisticated GPS system that could tell us, you know, the life of a particular charge and what, you know, how much mileage we had on a particular charge. On the ICE vehicles that we have, it's primarily through a GPS device.
Great. Well, thank you. I appreciate you fielding that question as well. I guess one maybe final question here. I definitely sense a lot of enthusiasm for EVs on this webinar, which is great. I'm kind of curious to know, specific to higher education, you know, what most excites you about the opportunities with EV? I mean, Tom, you had all these really neat examples of all the different types of vehicles that you're using at UCLA, but I'll kind of open it up for all of our panelists to maybe respond to this general question of kind of what most excites you about electrifying fleets at universities, and where are you kind of looking to next?
So kind of what excites me, you know, just personally, and I know my teammates as well, I'll use the electric Winnebago as the first example. That was the first all-electric Winnebago in the world. That was exciting to us. Trying to convince our customer who purchased it, because they wanted a traditional diesel Winnebago or even an unleaded one, but it was a process. It wasn't an easy process. You don't just go across the street and purchase a vehicle like that. But what's exciting to me is when we have a customer, when I say customer, you know, we have campus departments, submits a request, especially an unusual request like a Winnebago or something like that. And we do our research as a team and see, hey, there's an electric platform out there. And from A to Z, which is a long process, but when that vehicle shows up on our campus and is unloaded and it's in use and seeing it on the streets of Los Angeles going back and forth, you know, that's what really excites us, because we are really striving for that 100% goal. I think we will be successful in it. And we're just doing our part, especially in our state, to contribute to being green. Everything we do is green. So that's what excites us and our team.
Great, thanks, Tom. James or Sarah?
Yeah, I think, you know, this sort of a little bit of a pivot and focus on universities for us is universities and colleges are just centers of innovation and sustainability, and fleet vehicles get a lot of visibility on a campus, and just the application is a really great one for most campuses. You know, you are driving potentially less distance at a time, so the range anxiety might be less of a factor, and just seeing these vehicles go into place and having, kind of like Tom says, like happy customers, people that transition into an EV and are like, oh, this is exactly the same and better than the vehicle that I was driving. And so just continuing to kind of see universities leading the way in those, in all the ways that you know, they're traditionally seen as forward thinking and innovative and really good application for EVs generally. So I know we're at the EC, we're really excited to just learn more and work with universities and create this cohort of folks that can kind of work together. And you know, you don't have to be the first buying the electric Winnebago, which is so awesome. You can be buying your first Leaf and we'll be just as excited. So I think just working with people across the spectrum is really fun too.
Great, thanks, Sarah.
So I'll just add a couple of things. I mean, I think one of the things that I'm really excited about is just the way that cities and universities and so many other partners are kind of reimagining the future. And I mean, we're in some really difficult and challenging times, and it's hard to think about what's, you know, 6-12 months down the road. But I mean, I think you do see this genuine commitment to meaningful action, and that to me is what's really exciting, and I think gives me a lot of optimism about what lays ahead. And it's going to take a lot of work and a lot of focus, but I think you know, it's partnerships like these that can really build on that. And so yeah, it's I love to see the vehicles out of the road. I love to see people kind of exploring them and getting used to them and embracing them. But I think too, like just this overall commitment on the part of universities and cities and companies across the country to tackling this is really exciting. So I'm looking forward to future conversations. So thanks again, Alex. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, thank you. And I'll just quickly flip to our last slide here. And just to say thank you to all of our speakers again and to all of our attendees. Just as another reminder, a recording of this webinar will be posted online tomorrow, and you'll receive a link to it in an email from me. And should you have any need for additional information, please feel free to reach out to me at amaxwell@secondnature.org. I know several of our panelists also shared their contact information as well, so please feel free to use that in addition. So many thanks again, and we look forward to seeing you next time.